You're still single. My wife is a beautiful secretary. I'm living in a completely different world than a poor high school graduate like you.
Just as we reunited after 30 years, my former classmate, John, immediately started looking down on me. I was the only one among us who couldn't pursue further education after high school, so I understand his desire to boast. He wanted to spread the word about his beautiful wife who is successful in her career. If my family hadn't been poor, I wouldn't have had to work right after high school and could have attended a better high school than John. In that sense, I was considered a loser back then. At that moment, a woman dressed in a navy suit, returning with food on her plate, caught my attention. I see, she must be John's much bragged about beautiful secretary.
Let me introduce you. This is my wife, Ashley. Beautiful, isn't she?
While she could be considered beautiful, her makeup was thick. Ashley, noticing me, started trembling. My name is Michael Robinson, 45 years old this year. I am the president of Robinson Construction, a company that employs 7,200 people. Hearing just this, one might think I've led a privileged, elite life. However, the reality is far from privileged. It was a continuous struggle of bitterness and hardship. My family was extremely poor. Shortly after I was born, my father disappeared, leaving my mother to raise me on her own. I have no memories of ever having snacks, and a treat meant bread crusts fried in oil by my mother. Without school meals, I would have probably collapsed from hunger on my way home from school. It's hard to imagine that in a wealthy country like the United States, there was a child constantly feeling hungry. Since I couldn't afford games, I naturally took to studying whenever I had free time. As a result, I was always at the top of my class in elementary school. My teachers favored me, and during school, I could forget the hardships of poverty. Even in high school, my grades were excellent, and I was respected by my peers. I took on leadership roles, serving as class president and student council president, leading a fulfilling school life. Everything changed towards the end of my sophomore year of high school, when it was time to decide on a future path. Both my mother and my teacher had pained expressions on their faces. Despite having the grades to easily get into the top university in the state, our financial situation meant I couldn't pursue higher education. My mother, tearfully pleading with my teacher, said,
"Isn't there anything we can do? He loves studying and has good grades. It's too cruel to deprive him of the opportunity to study just because he was born into a poor family."
My acquaintance, the president of a construction company, actively supports students who work hard through adversity. How about we entrust Michael to him? He could work while taking distance education courses and earn a college degree.
After hearing this, my mother pondered for a while.
Construction, huh? I've heard it's a tough field. I doubt he'd have time to study leisurely. With the daily grind, continuing his studies seems impossible.
It all depends on Michael's effort. It's tough and requires perseverance, but it's not impossible. The president is a passionate and upstanding person. Why not give it a try?
Thanks to my teacher's encouragement, I ended up working for Robinson Construction. While everyone else went on to college, I was branded a loser at that point. There was one person who gleefully watched my life's downturn. John Smith. Since elementary school, he had always been my academic rival. John's mother was extremely keen on education, making him study all the time except for Christmas Day. During elementary school, I was also interested in playing around, so I couldn't always score perfect marks, making John the top student of the year. However, things changed in high school. Still harboring hopes for the future, I wanted to go to college and learn more. Once I started studying seriously, I quickly surpassed John, and throughout high school, I never relinquished my position as the top student. We even aspired to the same university, the one with the highest S80 scores in the state.
You're aiming for the same college as me, huh? But do you even have the money to attend and pay tuition?
He hit a sore spot, and I was left speechless. This issue has always been buried deep within me. Telling my mother would only make her sad, and sharing it with other adults would only garner sympathy, nothing more. While everyone else took for granted their dreams of college life, for me, it was a distant, unattainable future. The only selfish request I made during that time was to at least let me take the entrance exams. That year, I placed at the top of those exams, finally making peace with my situation. Thus, after graduating high school, John went on to college, and I started my career at Robinson. The construction industry is a male-dominated field where loud voices can be heard everywhere. As someone who was still clueless, I was trained on site by Jack Robinson, the president of Robinson. When I first joined the company, I rented a room in Jack's house where I was allowed to live. I managed to secure time for studying at night, working hard on my tasks. At that time, Jack's wife was pregnant, and they soon welcomed a new member to their family, a lovely girl named Sarah. Sarah became very attached to me, and whenever I was away for work, she would cry loudly looking for me.
Sarah really likes you, Michael. She won't stop crying even when her father holds her, but she smiles as soon as you pick her up.
I gained experience with other carpenters on site, but eventually I was told that I was better suited for office work such as calculations and design. I quickly learned to work on a computer and became a valuable asset. In due course, I graduated from a correspondence university. Feeling a sense of accomplishment, I decided not to pursue graduate school. By the time I was in my 30s, I started to be entrusted with important management roles in the company. Having someone who knows the field in charge can significantly change the flow of work. The voice of the site workers was better heard, and the management side could provide more detailed instructions. The company's performance improved significantly, the number of employees increased, and the company grew substantially. When I first joined, it was a medium-sized construction company, but now it has become a large corporation. At that time, Sarah had turned 18 and was growing up to be stunningly beautiful. We remained close, and Sarah developed romantic feelings for me. Eventually, my feelings for her evolved from seeing her as a reliable little sister to wanting to protect her at all costs. One day, I was called to a high-end restaurant by Jack, where I was told something surprising.
Michael, do you have a girlfriend or someone you like?
No, I'm quite happy with my work.
Then, would you consider marrying Sarah? She wants to marry you no matter what. I'd rather have her marry someone I trust like you than someone unknown.
As I was processing the situation, the sliding door at the back opened and Sarah entered, dressed in a beautiful gown. Finally understanding the situation, I straightened up and knelt, looking at Sarah. Though our feelings were mutual, I still wanted to formally propose. Jack, please let me marry Sarah. I promise to make her happy. Sarah shed tears and whispered, "Thank you." Thus, I married Sarah and took the Robinson surname. Although I was prepared for some jealousy, almost all the employees were supportive. Having something to protect might indeed change a man.
Recently, you seem to have gained a sense of dignity, Michael. Maybe it's because of your long experience in society. It makes me feel safe to follow you.
Sarah's reliance and the deep love I feel for her daily are gratifying. 30 years after entering the workforce, I turned 45 and took over as the second president of the company. A significant land development project was underway in our state's central area, and Robinson played a crucial role. That night, a reception for companies involved in the land development was held in a large hotel hall. I attended with two other employees. The hall, filled with men from the construction industry, was buzzing with energy. Not only were there employees from companies already involved in the development, but salesmen from companies looking to join were also present. The reception welcomed families, and I saw few women who looked like the wives of construction company presidents. Sarah mentioned she might join if she finished her chores in time. My colleagues rushed to the buffet. I took a moment to survey the surroundings with a champagne glass in hand. I locked eyes with a man I recognized from somewhere. He approached me with a big smile.
Michael, is that you? It's John. I heard you became a carpenter, but you were involved in this development project too.
It's been a long time. I'm surprised you recognize me. It's been 30 years since we last met.
I'm a sales department manager, so remembering faces and names is part of my job. I've always been confident in my memory. You don't look much like a carpenter.
Initially, I was hired as a carpenter, so he probably thinks I'm still working on site. 30 years have passed and people change positions or even careers. But it seems John's mind is still stuck at the moment he beat me in high school. Since there was nobody by my side, he must have assumed I didn't bring any family along.
Are you still alone? Well, I guess that's to be expected. My wife is a beautiful secretary. I'm living in a different world than a high school graduate like you.
Just as we reunited after 30 years, he quickly started looking down on me. I was the only one among my classmates who didn't go on to further education after high school graduation, so I understand the desire to boast. Wanting to spread the word about his beautiful wife and how he's excelling at work, I get it. If my family hadn't been poor, I wouldn't have had to work right after high school, and I could have attended a better university than John. In that sense, I was a loser back then. Then, a woman dressed in a navy blue suit came back with food on a plate. I see, she must be John's much bragged about beautiful secretary. The suit is plain, but perhaps she can't dress too flashy given her position as a secretary.
Let me introduce you. This is my wife, Ashley. Beautiful, isn't she?
I glanced at Ashley and smiled warmly. Sure, she could be considered beautiful, but I always thought she wore too much makeup. Noticing me, Ashley started to tremble. Thank you for the other day. It must have been hard for you since then.
I'm really sorry about what happened last time. Both the manager and I have been reflecting deeply, and we were planning to apologize in a few days.
During our conversation, John, realizing we weren't strangers, gave me a puzzled look.
What's this about? My Ashley works in a trading company. There's no way she'd have anything to do with a carpenter like you.
What are you talking about? This man is the president of Robinson, the top construction company in the state. We've been doing large transactions with them, and I made a terrible mistake the other day.
Ashley was the secretary to the sales manager of one of Robinson's business partners. John had made it sound like she was president's secretary, but she wasn't in such a responsible position. She had arranged a meeting with the manager and me, but due to a scheduling mistake by Ashley, the meeting fell through. Ashley deeply apologized.
I know this is a lot to ask, but could you give us another chance? For my husband's sake, I promise not to make such a disrespectful mistake again. Please.
For your husband's sake, huh? Well, I know him, but we're not exactly close. All right, I'll give you another chance, but make sure you're on time this time.
Thank you so much.
And Ashley continued apologizing, almost in tears. John was stunned at first, but as he began to understand the situation, he turned pale.
Robinson, as in the big corporation. You're its president. How did you become a president at your age with just a high school diploma?
Well, I worked hard. I've been in the workforce longer than most, so maybe I've just put in more effort. Ashley nodded deeply, impressed.
Your achievements are well known to us. You were reputed to be talented, but it's your attitude towards valuing the network of people you work with that's highly regarded.
John's mood worsened as he saw his prideful, beautiful wife bowing and scraping to me, whom he looked down upon, making him feel even more inferior.
So, you are married too?
Yeah, I got married when I was 23. How long have you and Ashley been married, John?
I'm married at 32. We're both career-oriented, leading a work-centered life.
A so-called power couple. Having the economic means to always dress beautifully, and both spouses building their careers is indeed something to boast about. Ashley looked around.
Is Mrs. Robinson not here? I've heard she's beautiful. I've been wanting to meet her.
My wife should be here soon. Then I'll introduce you. Just the mention of a beautiful wife soured John's mood further. But he probably thought it was just an exaggeration, typical of the spouses of important clients. Then Sarah hurried over.
Sorry, I'm late. The kids just wouldn't go to sleep.
John and Ashley were surprised by Sarah's youth.
Your wife, how old is she? She looks so young.
She's 30 this year. My wife was born the year I joined Robinson. It feels like I've been watching her grow up, waiting for her to mature.
Well, it's just like a love story from a movie or drama. Isn't that every man's dream?
I couldn't help but feel a bit flattered, scratching my head in embarrassment. I explained to Sarah, who joined us late, about John and Ashley.
I decided to marry Michael since I was born. I didn't want to risk someone else taking him away, so we got married as soon as I turned 18.
What a lovely story. How old are your children now?
They are only 5 and 3 years old. We wanted to enjoy some time together as a couple after getting married, so we went on trips abroad and played golf, enjoying a long honeymoon period.
Despite Sarah's innocent words, I could sense Ashley's turmoil. It was probably because of Sarah's visible pregnancy. Sarah loves elegant fashion and doesn't seem like someone who is busy raising small children. The jewelry, bags, and shoes she wears are all top of the line. She only buys limited edition items from well-known brands, making her the envy of her brand-loving friends. Ashley seems to compare her belongings to Sarah's and feels down because she seems to have a high interest in branded goods.
Even after marrying John, thinking we would have a comfortable life financially, his spending habits are so bad that I still need to work to support our family. So, we ended up giving up on having children.
Ashley bit her lip in frustration. It must be hard for her to see Sarah affectionately caressing her belly, especially if she gave up on having children for her career. Men can father children at a much older age, but it's not the same for women. John looked displeased, listening to the women's conversation.
There's no use complaining about it now. And when it comes to spending, you're just as bad.
Normally, if both spouses work, they contribute equally to the household. You always spend so much on your motorcycle hobby, leaving me to foot the bill. And you think flattering your pretty secretary will make everything okay.
You're one to talk, buying all those unnecessary brand bags and clothes. Having one of each should be enough. But no, you buy a new one every time a new collection comes out.
As the argument between the couple escalated, Sarah left to get some food. I opened another bottle of champagne, pondering over John's life. He went from the top high school in the state to a prestigious university, landed a coveted sales job, and married a beautiful woman. Without children, he must have more disposable income than most. He used to enjoy making others envious of his lifestyle. But now, having reconnected with me, he must realize that someone he once looked down upon is actually living a happier life. Comparing yourself to others only leads to dissatisfaction. Even if you surpass someone, there's always someone else better. I consider myself happy, but not because I compare myself to John. Happiness is not about feeling superior to others. I'm not a world-renowned millionaire, and I have my share of struggles at work. Comparing myself to the world's richest would be absurd. Since I came here to socialize, I'm looking for new connections. I was about to distance myself from John when he grabbed my sleeve to stop me.
Hey, Michael, could you consider doing business with my company? We've been trying to expand into the Asian market, but it failed. We're thinking of shifting to local development projects.
So, you're saying you missed the boat while focusing overseas? That's a big mistake.
We studied together in high school. Let's work together again as adults.
It was a ridiculous proposition. I couldn't understand how he came to that conclusion. I still remember John's contemptuous remark about whether I could afford college tuition. And with me out of the picture, he must have felt superior. Being the top student, there's no good in associating with him now, and I'm not particularly philanthropic. Frankly, John's presence is just annoying. I'm sorry, but I have to decline. I don't see us having a pleasant relationship. John was dumbfounded, clearly not expecting a rejection.
Please, Michael, don't say that. My sales haven't been great lately, and I might be demoted if things don't improve. I want to avoid that at all costs.
As harsh as it sounds, that's just a reflection of your capabilities. Who would want to start a new deal with someone who's failing? Meanwhile, Ashley, who had been silent until now, chimed in.
Please do this for me as well. Despite what I'm saying, the truth is, if our performance doesn't improve, I might be forced to leave the company. If John loses his job, we won't be able to live like we used to.
What did you do? Ashley reluctantly begins to speak, biting his lip in frustration.
Actually, he had an affair with a client's wife. As a result, that couple ended up divorcing, and we were sued for a large sum in damages. The company found out, and now I'm hanging by a thread.
Are you okay with that, Ashley? I know you from our professional dealings, so I have some idea of your character. Aren't you actually unable to forgive him? Ashley looks down silently, then spits out in frustration.
I don't want to just throw everything away as it is. I plan to leave him once he's able to stand on his own 2 feet.
What? You plan to divorce me? I haven't heard anything about this.
I was listening to their argument from a distance. There's no way their relationship can be mended, and I have no intention of getting involved with them or entertaining any business dealings. To avoid further provocation, I quietly left their side, met up with Sarah, and we left after a while. What follows is what I heard directly from Ashley about the ongoing situation. The urban redevelopment project in the county involves various industries, but John's company couldn't get involved anywhere. The scandal involving John, the sales manager, had become well known, and it was the reason the upper management, considering the company's survival at risk, decided to let John go. Being allowed to take early retirement was a small consolation. The severance pay went to the damages claimed by the husband of John's affair, leaving almost nothing for John himself. Ashley decided to give up on John and presented him with divorce papers.
Living with John had its happy moments, but I've moved on. Fortunately, I have a job, no kids, and plan to take better care of myself from now on.
John, once proud of his high-earning wife, now faced the reality of living on his own without sufficient means. As the divorce settlement halved his savings and forced him to sell his home, unwilling to lower his lifestyle, John set high expectations for his next job. However, positions that meet his high standards were rare. His miscalculations weren't just about his position. Previously, living off both his and Ashley's salaries allowed for a quite affluent lifestyle. Now, even with the same salary, he had to cut his living standards in half. Without a job, John moved to a cheaper apartment. Eventually, he might have thought staying in this place was the problem and quietly moved to another state. Nobody, including Ashley, knows what happened to John afterward. Meanwhile, Ashley is doing well in life. Initially regretting not having children, she found new purpose in volunteer work invited by a friend, hoping to make a difference in the lives of underprivileged children abroad. Next year, she plans to visit Africa to meet those children. She sold all her luxury brands, living minimally.
I'm grateful to you for giving me a chance to change my perspective on life.
Now Ashley talks cheerfully with simpler makeup and clothing. She caught the attention of some male colleagues, making her future seem promising. 3 months later, Sarah gave birth to a healthy girl. We became parents of 3. The responsibility is greater, but the kids are irreplaceable treasures. Sarah says she wants one more, and I'm all for it. Growing up Pua, I can't let my children face the same fate. Maintaining my health and working hard is crucial. Lately, I've come to understand what it means to live vicariously through your children. However, I'm careful not to force them into what I believe is right, trusting Sarah to keep me in check. The county's redevelopment project is progressing well. Due to the lack of adequate transportation in this region, reliance on cars is inevitable. Those who have disabilities have to drive a car to get to the hospital. It's a problem occurring all across the U.S. However, in 5 years, the development of subway lines and dedicated bus lanes will enable people to travel to many places without needing a car. I've heard that autonomous buses will also be introduced on a trial basis. The number of hospitals and nursing homes is expected to increase as well. Even though I'm working hard now, we will all inevitably age. We're striving to make our town more livable for when that time comes. Not just for us, but for the future of our children. Doing all we can now is the only way forward. As I look up at a building under construction, I make a renewed pledge to myself to strive even harder.
Come on, at least wear a suit, you broke loser. Don't tell me you don't own one.
Daniel said to me with a loud laugh. The classmates I was reminiscing with also looked shocked. I do own a suit, I retorted, irritated by Daniel's words. I couldn't understand why I had to feel irritated in what was supposed to be a joyful place. Daniel has always looked down on me. It's about time I made him understand. I had made a certain decision. My name is Mike Jones. I'm 30 years old. As a child, due to my dad's job, we moved a lot. When I was in the 7th grade, my dad got transferred again, and we moved to the countryside.
Sorry for another transfer, but it looks like this will be the last one,
my dad told me cheerfully. Changing schools was a pain for me, being shy and introverted, but knowing it was the last time made me feel relieved. The middle school I transferred to was much smaller compared to my previous one, but all my classmates were kind, and I was excited for the new life ahead. However, there was one person who didn't think well of me. That was Daniel Rickley.
Hey, nerd. Stop just studying all the time.
Daniel would pick on me at every opportunity. I was just copying notes.
Shut up. Don't talk back. especially when you don't even have a mom.
Daniel intimidated me by raising his voice. My mom passed away due to illness when I was little. I wish I could talk to her if possible. But that's impossible.
Hey, Daniel, don't say things like that.
When I looked sad, my classmates often stood up for me. But that only seemed to make Daniel less amused, and his taunts continued until we graduated middle school. Whenever I scored well on tests, he'd accuse, "You must have cheated, right?" And when I, being in the track team, recorded a good time, he'd claim, "That's a false start, do it over." Daniel thoroughly disliked me. I spent my middle school years avoiding him. My turning point came during high school entrance exams. I heard rumors that Daniel was going to a different school out of state, so I intentionally chose a high school close to my middle school. I thought I'd be free from Daniel. That's all I was thinking. Just as I wished, we went to different high schools, and I no longer had to deal with Daniel. I felt an indescribable sense of relief. I made new friends in high school and enjoyed my life there. I joined the track team again and spent my after-school hours working up a good sweat together with my teammates. It was a truly fulfilling and fun time, unlike my middle school days. After enjoying my high school life, I got a job at a sewing factory right after graduating. Though I wanted to go to college, I didn't want to burden my dad, who raised me on his own, any further. My dad had said it was okay for me to go to college, but I turned down the offer and started working at the factory instead. The job I landed was at a sewing factory for an apparel company. It wasn't that I had any particular interest in clothes, but this factory was the only place willing to hire someone with just a high school diploma like me. Until I got this job, I had never even touched a sewing machine, much less knew anything about making clothes. However, my bosses and co-workers taught me everything kindly and so patiently. 5 years into the job, I had finally learned all the tasks in the factory.
Hey Mike, I can't get this right.
Oh, let me do it. I think you should do like this.
I see. You've been impressive lately. I need to work harder.
My senior coworker, Harper, said with a laugh. I, who didn't have any special qualities, had become knowledgeable in sewing. My colleagues depended on me. Life was fulfilling until that day. That day, something happened. I went to the factory as usual and was planning what to do on that day with Harper. Suddenly, the entrance got noisy. Is there something special happening today? I asked Harper. She also looked confused.
Our boss said, today there's supposed to be an important deal.
I turned my gaze towards the factory entrance. And there he was, Daniel, the last person I wanted to see. I rubbed my eyes and looked again, but it was definitely Daniel. Why is he here? I kept my head down and continued working quietly.
Thank you for coming all this way.
Well, it's an important deal, of course.
The boss was fawning over Daniel. Then, I could hear Daniel's voice getting closer to where I was. And when I finally looked up, Daniel was standing right in front of me, looking at me and laughing. He had found me. I had a bad feeling.
What? You're working here? I heard you started working right after high school, but in a factory. That's hilarious.
I ignored his words and kept working. Then, the boss, looking surprised, spoke to Daniel.
You know each other. Mike has been working hard and has become a vital part of this factory.
Daniel suddenly started laughing again.
This guy is a vital part. Back in middle school, he was a complete failure, always causing trouble for everyone. I can't believe it.
Daniel's words caused the boss's face to harden. Harper, who was working next to me, looked at Daniel with a puzzled expression.
A failure, you say?
Yes, really. Right, Mike?
Daniel suddenly turned to me. Annoyed, I said, I didn't cause trouble for anyone. Can't you stop spouting nonsense? Daniel's face became slightly angry.
I'm not spouting nonsense. You've been a failure since back then. How dare you talk back to me?
I was at a loss for words. Then, Daniel said something shocking.
Sir, if you want to do business with my company, you'll have to fire this guy. If he's here, I'm sure the company won't do well. He's a jinx.
Suddenly, the factory fell silent. My colleagues looked at Daniel with shocked faces. The boss took a deep breath and then said to Daniel, "Well, let's have some tea over there," and led him to the office. I couldn't understand what right he had to try and get me fired. Daniel has always been someone who tries to get his way in everything. As I sighed, Harper looked at me with concern.
Don't worry about what that person says. He's truly unpleasant.
Harper offered me kind words while we worked. He's always disliked me. He just wants to make me suffer this time too. Over the past 5 years, I've worked hard and sweated it out in this factory, and the boss knows it. Even if Daniel, the client representative, requested my firing, I was confident the boss would never let me go. However, that confidence was shattered. That evening, the boss asked me to come to his office. Having never been called by the boss before, I entered the office, puzzled. The boss seemed a bit down, and he began to speak.
Mike, I'm really sorry, but could you take a break from work until the deal with TA Corporation is finalized?
Excuse me. I couldn't believe my ears. I never expected to hear something like this from the boss. He continued.
You understand how important the contract with TA Corporation is to our company, right?
TA Corporation is a well-known company in the apparel industry, renowned to the point where nobody in this field hasn't heard of them. I remembered Harper mentioning that this deal could involve hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes.
Apparently, Daniel has taken a dislike to you. If that causes us to lose the contract, it would be a huge loss for the company. But I don't want to fire you because you've been working so hard. Could you just take a break for a while? I'd like to pretend to fire you.
All I could do was nod to the boss's desperate words. I couldn't understand why I, who hadn't done anything wrong, had to take a break from work. But for the sake of the boss and the company, I had no choice but to comply with his request. For a week, I stayed at home. I was unable to focus on anything. I hope the work I was responsible for is okay with Harper handling it. Then, Harper called me. There was some work she couldn't figure out. I tried to explain over the phone, but when I couldn't convey it well, I reluctantly headed to the factory. I sneaked into the factory and approached Harper.
Mike, I'm really sorry for bothering you during your time off.
Harper said in a quiet, apologetic voice. Making sure not to be seen by other coworkers, I quietly showed her how to do the work. She seemed to understand the work method and thanked me. As I was about to leave the factory without anyone noticing, an incident occurred. At the entrance was Daniel. He was looking surprised. Then, he raised his voice.
Why are you here? Weren't you fired?
Damn it. I involuntarily stepped back. Hearing his voice, the boss came out of his office. The boss was looking troubled.
Mike.
I just came back for something I forgot. I lied to Daniel on the spot. Then Daniel, scoffing at me, and said, "See, you're bothering everyone. Bay's no place for a high school graduate like you to get employed anywhere. Get out of here if you understand." The boss nearby just silently watched, saying nothing. What have I done to Daniel? I was sick of Daniel's behavior. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Daniel, why do you always have to be against me? I haven't done anything to you. Unable to hold back any longer, I raised my voice. The factory co-workers looked at me with concern. Especially Harper, who seemed about to run over to me with a worried expression. Daniel, unfazed by my words, retorted, "I hate you because you haven't put in any effort at all. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to get to where I am today? Meanwhile, you, with just a high school diploma, are breezing through an easy job. You think I haven't put in any effort? Give me a break. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked at this factory?" Daniel burst out laughing.
Anyone can work in a factory, can't they?
No matter how hard I try to talk to him, I can't get through. That's what I realized at that moment. It was just a waste of time to continue this conversation anymore. I took off the place. Even after I had left, Daniel continued to laugh looking at me. As I ran, I made a decision. A few days later, I called the boss and told him I was resigning. I thought I shouldn't cause any more trouble for the company because of my presence. The boss tried desperately to stop me, but my mind was made up. After that, I started job hunting, but it was frustrating not being able to find the next job right away. However, my father said, "You've worked hard until now, so it's okay to take a break. Life is long. A little rest won't hurt." Inspired by my father's words, I spent a year doing what I wanted. Having worked earnestly for 5 years, I had more than enough savings. I'll take my time finding the next job. When the time came, I smoothly landed my next job. Then, I began working hard again. 6 more years passed, and I was now 30. My job was going well and living peaceful days. One day, I arranged to meet Mason, a middle school classmate, at a cafe for the first time in a long while. Mason was my best friend during middle school. Since we went to the same high school, we were like best friends and occasionally met up to share updates after graduating. Now, Mason works for a multinational company, traveling all over the world. I was delighted when he wanted to meet.
Hey, long time no see.
Mason greeted me cheerfully. It's been 2 years since we last met before you went abroad. Reuniting with Mason brought back memories, and our conversation flowed.
Hey, why don't you come to the reunions?
He suddenly asked. I was puzzled by what he meant. A reunion.
Didn't you get an invitation about a month ago? This time, Daniel and I were organizing it, and Daniel said you wouldn't be attending the reunion.
It was news to me. I hadn't received any invitation. It seemed Daniel intentionally didn't send me one, not wanting me at the reunion. I didn't get any invitation. Daniel probably didn't send it to me on purpose, not wanting me to come. Mason was surprised by my words.
Is that so? I had thought you just didn't want to attend the reunion. He's the worst.
Mason said angrily while sipping his coffee. Daniel being unpleasant isn't just a recent thing, actually. I told Mason everything that had happened 6 years ago. He looked at me incredulously.
I'm at a loss for words that such a thing happened.
Yo, I figured, but I am who I am today because of him. So, I've let bygones be bygones. Indeed, Daniel was unpleasant, but thanks to him, I was able to grow stronger. Without him, I might have remained a person with little self-confidence and no particular quality forever. Over 6 years, I came to think this way.
What about the reunion? Daniel will be there too. Want to skip it?
Mason asked, considering my feelings. I laughed and said to Mason, since we're here, I'll attend. Mason smiled happily. Honestly, I was a bit afraid of meeting Daniel. He would probably just insult me again. But I am not the same person I was 6 years ago. I decided to attend the reunion with pride. After promising to meet at the reunion, we parted ways to go home. I was truly grateful to him. If I hadn't met him today, I would never have known about the reunion. Thinking of the classmates I would meet after a long time, I headed home. On the day of the reunion, I wore a new shirt. Seeing that, my dad asked me,
Aren't you going to wear a suit to the reunion? Isn't it at a 3-star hotel?
He looked at me worriedly. It was understandable for him to be concerned. A 3-star hotel as the venue meant I had to dress appropriately. But I didn't want to wear a suit on my day off. That's why I had prepared a shirt that was casual but suitable for a 3-star hotel for today. I'm going to attend in this outfit. It'll be fine. He still looked worried.
But that Daniel guy will be there, right? Won't he make snide remarks again?
I had told him everything that happened 6 years ago. He still harbored resentment towards Daniel, seemingly holding a grudge. I reassured him, even if he makes snide remarks, it's okay, I don't care anymore, and smiled. Seeing my smile, Dad seemed reassured and didn't say anything more. I left the house looking forward to reuniting with my old classmates. I felt light on my feet. Entering the 3-star hotel, I was greeted by a grand chandelier and a glamorous atmosphere. Filled with anticipation, I made my way to the hotel's restaurant.
Mike, thanks for coming.
Mason ran over to me, looking happy. Hey, I'm so excited about today. I smiled naturally just by talking to him. We entered the restaurant. The restaurant was booked exclusively for the reunion, and a lavish spread of food was laid out. Even though the reunion hadn't officially started, many of my old classmates were already there, engaged in lively conversations. Seeing me, my classmates approached with cries of joy.
Mike, it's been since middle school graduation. It's so nostalgic.
My classmates approached me cheerfully. We were engaging in endless conversations about the silly and funny stories from our middle school days. Before I knew it, the reunion had started, and my classmates began to gather around one after another.
Daniel has really made something of himself, hasn't he?
A classmate suddenly started talking about Daniel. What's so great about him? I asked, genuinely curious. The classmate quickly started explaining.
He's apparently the sales manager at TA Corporation.
TA Corporation, as in that big company. Daniel was always smart, wasn't he? He's the most successful among us.
And he's even pushing forward deals with that major apparel manufacturer.
So, Daniel became a manager right after I left my previous job. Well, it's none of my business. As I was thinking this, the entrance to the restaurant became even noisier.
Oh, speak of the devil.
There stood Daniel. And he dressed in a fine suit. I involuntarily looked away. Daniel didn't know I was attending this reunion. In fact, he had intended not to invite me. I thought he would freak out if he found out I was here. I looked at Mason. In a low voice, Mason told me, "You haven't done anything wrong. Just stand tall and proud." Mason's words eased my mind a bit. I shouldn't care about Daniel at all. Thanks, Mason, I said, and continued our conversation. But soon, Daniel spotted me and looked as if he had seen a ghost, probably not expecting me to be here. He raised his voice.
Why are you here? You weren't invited.
Daniel's face turned red with anger. Mason invited me to the reunion. If it's a middle school reunion, I have every right to attend, don't I? Daniel reacted immediately to my words.
I don't consider you my classmate. It's presumptuous of you to come to the reunion without my permission.
Hearing Daniel's words, the surrounding classmates began to murmur.
This is not the place for you.
Geez, how long will he keep insulting me before he's satisfied? I was utterly exhausted. So, you'll be satisfied if I leave? Daniel scoffed.
Yeah, that's right. Now get out of here. And that outfit, it's totally out of place here, isn't it?
I had managed to talk a bit with the classmates I wanted to, and thought it might be best to leave as he suggested. Then, he added insultingly,
Wear a suit at least, you poor thing. Don't tell me you don't own one.
I was speechless. What is he even talking about? I do own a suit. I just didn't want to wear one on my day off. Daniel laughed even more at my words. I couldn't understand what was so funny.
Don't act all tough. You didn't have the money to buy a suit, did you? You never owned one in the first place, did you? Admit it, you're broke.
I was shocked by his rudeness. There was nothing more to talk about. I was about to leave the place, but he uttered words I couldn't forgive.
Hey. Should I give you one of my old suits? It's more expensive than you could ever afford in your lifetime.
Although I was frustrated inside, I pretended to listen calmly.
If you want to wear suits like mine, try getting a job at a renowned company like I did. Though, that's impossible for someone incompetent like you.
I reached my breaking point. I couldn't understand why he had to go that far. Just as I was about to raise my voice, Mason shouted,
Mike doesn't need your hand-me-down suits.
I was shocked. Mason had always been gentle, and I had never seen him shout. That Mason was raising his voice for me. I was so surprised that I almost dropped my drink. Daniel, taken aback, glared at Mason.
Hand-me-downs. This suit is from KG Industries, the major suit manufacturer my company is about to deal with. Not something a poor person like Mike could easily afford.
Daniel, unfortunately, could you cancel that deal? The room seemed to go silent for a moment.
What?
Daniel acted as if he hadn't heard me. No helping it. I repeated the same words. I'm asking if you could cancel the deal between your company and mine. The room fell silent.
What are you talking about? My company has no deal with you.
Do you really not recognize my face? You know nothing, do you? I couldn't help but question Daniel, but he just laughed.
What's with that tone? You're Mike the incompetent, right? There's no other option.
I realized it was pointless to talk to Daniel and handed him my business card. Sorry for the late introduction. I'm Mike, the president of KG Industries. I mistakenly made a contract to create a collaborative product with your company, but I'd like it to be annulled.
What? President of KG Industries.
Daniel's face turned pale. Seeing Daniel's reaction, Mason said, "That's why I told you he doesn't need your suit, he has plenty without yours," and burst into laughter. Yes, I am the president of the major suit manufacturer, KG Industries. Becoming president was triggered by the incident 6 years ago. After quitting my job, I struggled to find new work. Luckily, I had savings, so I decided to take it easy for a while and made a suit for my father on a whim. My father wore suits to work every day, and I wanted to make a stylish suit for him. The suit was quickly finished, and when I gave it to my father, he was delighted, making me feel proud. My father wore the suit I made to work the very next day. That evening, he asked me if I could make 2 more suits. Apparently, his colleagues wanted one after seeing my father's suit. Of course, I made suits for his colleagues too. Then the next day, someone else requested one. This cycle continued, and the demand for my suits grew. A month later, I was swamped with orders for dozens of suits. I was surprised that a suit I made on a whim became so popular. Seeing this, my father suggested, "Why don't you start a company?" Indeed, if I could manufacture suits in a factory, I could sell them immediately without making customers wait. Inspired, I decided to establish a company. Starting a business required a substantial amount of money, and I even took out loans, but the demand for my unique and stylish suits never ceased, and my company quickly grew. Just 6 years after founding my company, it went public and became a suit maker so famous that nobody didn't know who we were. One day, I got a direct call from the president of TA Corporation. He wanted to collaborate with my company to create a new product. Collaborating with a major apparel company like TA Corporation would only increase my company's fame. The president of TA Corporation was very enthusiastic, even saying he'd spare no expense for the collaboration. Memories of trouble with an employee from TA Corporation, Daniel, crossed my mind, but I decided to focus on a company and went ahead with the deal. However, knowing that Daniel was still an employee at TA Corporation, I started to feel I couldn't continue the deal. I didn't want anything to do with someone so disrespectful. When Daniel found out I was the president of KG Industries, he started apologizing to me, sweating bullets.
I had no idea you were the president. Please forgive me.
I ignored him and tried to leave the venue. He followed me and blocked my path.
Hey, I'm sorry. It was my fault.
It was too late for apologies. I sighed. It's too late. I won't forgive you. Then Daniel shouted,
We're friends, aren't we? How can you be so cold? If the president finds out this deal fell through because of me, I'll be fired. Are you okay with that?
Daniel was acting arrogantly even then. I took out my smartphone and called someone. Daniel just watched, puzzled. Hello, I'm sorry, but let's cancel this deal.
What? What do you mean?
Your employee, Daniel's attitude is too much. I can't go through with the contract. The person I called was the president of TA Corporation. Knowing I was talking to the president, Daniel started to panic and fell to his knees.
What? I'll remove Daniel from the project. Please, reconsider.
No, I've made up my mind, I said and hung up the phone. Daniel realized it was futile and just sat there in silence. I looked down at him. I have one last question. Daniel stayed silent. But I continued. I needed to know. Why did you always look down on me? Didn't you think it was cruel, considering I never did anything to you? Daniel answered in a small voice. I was jealous. You succeeded at everything without any particular efforts, while I had to struggle. Only the person themselves knows how much effort and hardship they've gone through. It's terrible that you treated me so poorly because of that. Reflect on how much you've hurt me, I said and left the venue with Mason. Daniel seemed to be crying pitifully for a long time. Mason and I left the venue with clear faces. Finally, I could say what we wanted to Daniel. Mason, thanks. I thanked him. He was there for me. Mason smiled awkwardly and said, We're friends, aren't we? Of course, I do this much. Later, the president of TA Corporation and Daniel came to apologize to my company.
We're very sorry for the disrespectful behavior of our employee, Daniel. We'll reassign him to a regional office for reflection. Please forgive us.
The president apologized deeply next to Daniel. Daniel was also apologizing deeply.
I'm very sorry for my past actions, and will make sure not to behave that way again.
I sighed and looked at my secretary, Harper. In a soft voice, she whispered, He seems genuinely remorseful. Maybe it's okay to forgive him this time. Daniel was surprised by her presence.
You were there at that time.
Yes, when I started this company, I had invited Harper to join. Because I knew she would be a great support, and I wanted to work with her. Moreover, Harper and I had gotten married, becoming husband and wife.
My husband always appreciates your help,
Harper said, politely. Following that, the president of TA Corporation and I continued our discussion and decided to proceed with the deal. As the president said, Daniel was reassigned to a regional office and never appeared before me again. In his new position, he seemed to have changed his attitude completely, dedicating himself to his work. I hope he continues to live without causing trouble for others. The brand we co-developed with TA Corporation became a massive hit. We sold millions and generating millions of dollars in profit for my company. I realized that without Harper's words, none of this would have happened. I can't thank her enough. Moving forward, I plan to make this company even better and ensure Harper's happiness. My name's Nick Edison. I'm a young employee at Murphy Motors, a major car manufacturer. I have loved automobiles since I was a kid, and I joined this company by desperately acquiring knowledge. After that, I was recognized for my efforts, and thankfully, as a member of the development department, I was able to lead a full and hectic working life. Today, after a long meeting about a new product project, just as I was about to leave, the general manager called out to me.
Hey Nick, got a minute?
Yes, sir. What can I do for you?
Don't be so tense. It's nothing weird. You know the part we're planning to use for the new product in the project you're involved in, right? The one we talked about in the meeting.
Oh, that part, right. What about it?
Well, as we mentioned in the meeting, we're planning to outsource it, and I'm thinking of leaving the decision of choosing the contractor up to you.
Me? Really? I couldn't help but raise my voice in surprise. Seeing me flustered, the general manager gently smiled and patted my shoulder.
Life's all about experiences, you know.
But isn't it too soon for me to handle such an important task? I mean, outsourcing this part is going to be a deal worth about $100 million, right? Are you sure I'm the right person to proceed with this?
Don't worry. I've got a list of candidates here. Each company on this list is trusted and technically competent, and other employees will help with the actual negotiations and procedures. I want you to actually see the candidates and their products to develop your eye.
Develop my eye.
Yeah, it might feel daunting because it's a big deal, but I think it's absolutely necessary for your future. I believe in you, so go ahead with confidence. If you ever have any trouble or doubts, you can always come to me.
With the department head's encouraging smile, I left the meeting room feeling nervous. The list given to me had companies that our company had long relationships with, and as the department head said, each was trustworthy and technically competent. Choosing from this list, I was sure to make the right decision. From that day, I took a few days to schedule appointments and visit the companies listed. Today, I visited the last company on the list.
Mr. Nick Addison, we've been expecting you. Please, this way.
A polite young female employee guided me to the reception room. She seemed to be in her mid-20s. She respectfully handed me her business card.
Nice to meet you. I'm in charge here, Emily Sanders.
I looked over the business card she handed me. I had thought she was from sales, but she was actually from the technical department, which surprised me a bit.
Did you find it unusual that someone from the technical department rather than sales came to meet you?
Had it shown on my face? She hit the nail on the head. I wondered if it was rude to be surprised by her gender. But lying or making up something silly here would be odd. I decided to just nod. Yes, it's a betrayer to see women in technical positions in this industry. I apologize if that was rude.
No worries. I get that a lot, and it doesn't bother me. Nick, could we go over the details of this project now?
Sure, please take a look at this document. I handed Emily the document, and after a brief explanation of the project's details, it was clear she was from the technical department. She understood quickly, and her questions were specific and on point, making for a lively conversation that left me feeling refreshed. After finishing our business discussion, I left the company feeling stretched. Having visited several companies, I felt like it had the most potential. Thinking I should quickly consult with my boss, I glanced at my watch to see it was just before noon. Right on time for lunch. I figured I might as well grab a bite nearby to sort my farts before heading back to work. As I walked a bit, I happened upon a diner. Entering through its slightly faded blue curtain, eyesight was more than half full. We settled into the seats designated for two, and after stowing my bag in the luggage space, we began to browse through the lunch menu. After some deliberation, we ended up ordering the daily special for lunch. While sipping water and casually scanning the room, I noticed it had filled up completely. There were even a few people lined up near the entrance, waiting for a seat, and the staff were asking if customers wouldn't mind sharing tables. When they came to me with the same request, I saw no reason to refuse. To my surprise, the person brought to share my table was none other than Emily Sanders. We both recognized each other and exclaimed in surprise,
"Oh."
"Ah." We realized it at the same moment and exclaimed in surprise simultaneously. The person in front of me was Emily. With a slightly bashful demeanor, she gave a small nod and took the seat across from me.
What a coincidence.
Yes, I was just about to grab some lunch before heading back.
This place is great good value, generous portions, and delicious. I recommend it.
Seemingly irregular, she placed his order with the server without even looking at the menu and then set her Dell phone down on the table. Attached to what appeared to be her cell phone was a strap featuring an old, faded light blue minivan, which inadvertently caught my eye. Hey, isn't that one of our company's models?
Yes. I've loved this model since I was a kid. My dad got me this strap when I was in elementary school. It means a lot to me, and I still cherish it.
Her eyes lighting up with genuine affection for cars.
Actually, my late dad worked in your company's development department. He was involved in developing this minivan and used to tell me all about it, which sparked my interest in the automotive industry.
I see. My dad was also part of that minivan project. Maybe they knew each other.
If that's the case, it's quite a fascinating connection. You and your dad seem to have ties to the same company.
Well, you're quite impressive yourself. Honestly, isn't it tough being a woman in a technical role in this industry?
Sure, it can be challenging. I often hear things like because you're a woman, despite being a woman, or for a woman, which can be quite tiresome. But that just motivates me to prove them wrong.
She replied brightly. That sight struck me as incredibly noble, and I couldn't help but feel it looked quite cool. Afterward, I decided to proceed with making Emily's company our top choice for the contract. Although all the companies we considered had excellent technical capabilities and their representatives were trustworthy, Emily's company stood out for its exceptional technical prowess. Moreover, it was clear Emily was genuinely passionate about cars, and I felt that working with her would lead to the creation of something great. In the process of working towards the final agreement, I made several visits to Emily's company to discuss specifications and contract her. Through these discussions, she and I became close, reaching a point where we could talk openly and comfortably. After our meetings, it became a natural habit for us to head to the usual diner without either of us formally suggesting it, where we spent many days engaging in light-hearted and enjoyable conversations. It felt like everything was going smoothly. After stopping by the factory to prepare for the internal meeting scheduled for tomorrow, I was in the office reviewing documents when I realized that I was missing some materials related to the contract with Emily's company. I realized I had left some contract-related documents at Emily's company. It is clearly my mistake. Feeling somewhat apologetic, I arranged a meeting with Emily. When I mentioned it might take some time to prepare, so I hope you don't mind waiting, she graciously accepted, which was a relief to me. If I were to return to the headquarters first and then head over, it would be past Emily's company's regular working hours. Feeling it might be a bit rude, but considering I was only there to pick up documents, I decided to head to Emily's company still in my work clothes. Upon arrival, I learned that she was still preparing the documents. I was escorted to the usual reception room by a young female office worker, who seemed to be a new employee covering for Emily. Just as I was about to reach for the iced coffee she had served, something happened. Suddenly, a can from the side swiftly snatched away the coffee. Cold. Before I could even react, the coffee was spilled on me. I was completely baffled, unsure of what had just happened. Confused and looking up, I saw a middle-aged man holding the empty cup, looking down at me with a sneer.
Hey, maybe that dirty work outfit of yours got a bit cleaner, huh? You should be thankful.
Excuse me.
I don't know if you're a subcontractor or a bottom-rung worker, but who permitted you to barge into the reception room? The representative from Murphy Motors is going to be here any minute now. Get out of here, quick. Come on, scram, you slowpoke scum.
With a twisted smile, the middle-aged man grabbed my arm, pulled me up, and forcibly made me stand. The pain from being grabbed and pulled up made me wince, and just then, the door to the reception room was flung open with a bang.
Truman, what are you doing?
What? Just waking up a piece of trash, bottom-rung worker who doesn't know his place. Can't you see? Useless women should stay out of the way.
Truman, what on earth are you saying? This man is a representative from Murphy Motors. Let go of him immediately.
No way. A man dressed in these filthy work clothes and looking like he's from the bottom rung couldn't possibly be an employee of that top tire company. Emily, have you finally lost it?
The man referred to as Manager Truman roughly let go of my arm. Then, to mock Emily, he tapped his temple with his index finger in a derisive gesture. Stunned by the outrageous behavior, I was furious at the man who was mocking Emily to no end. It's you who's out of your mind. Can't you even read the company name on the work clothes? I pointed to the chest area of my coffee-stained work clothes. Of course, it had the name Murphy Motors written on it. The color drained from Truman's face, who had been acting so arrogantly. Though it was an emergency that brought me here in this attire, isn't spilling coffee on someone more indicative of being out of line? Like Truman had done earlier, I tapped my temple area with my index finger to show him. I knew it wasn't good to stoop to his level, but I couldn't help but retort. His face, which had been pale, turned red like a boiled octopus in an instant.
Back!
He seemed like he wanted to yell at me, but somehow managed to hold on to the last bit of his sanity. I looked coldly at Truman, whose face was twisted in frustration. Since you've told me to leave, I will. Goodbye. I left the reception room and made my way to the entrance. Unfortunately, the sky was overcast, and it continued to pour rain heavily. I hesitated to ride the bus in my coffee-stained clothes and didn't have an umbrella. Just as I was about to call a taxi with my cell phone,
Nick,
someone called me out. I turned around in surprise to see Emily running towards me with an umbrella and documents in her arms. Breathless, she reached me and offered the umbrella, looking concerned.
Nick, are you all right? Didn't get burned or anything?
Yes, luckily it was iced coffee, so I'm fine. You came all this way to check on me and even brought an umbrella.
Well, and I couldn't give you the documents earlier. But now, it's probably unnecessary, given what Truman did.
Thank you. As for the contract, I can't really decide anything right here and now, given it's a matter between companies and a large project.
Nick, please don't hesitate to speak your mind. It'd be their own fault if the contract is terminated.
She laughed it off as if she had come to terms with something. I was taken aback by Emily's unexpected behavior, thinking she was always so serious.
With this rain and your current state, if you don't mind, I can drive you.
That's too much. And aren't you still on the working hours?
It's fine. I'm planning to slam my resignation on the desk tomorrow anyway.
What? Resignation? You're leaving the company.
I've had enough of that manager for a while now. But today's outrageous act was the last straw. If you don't mind, would you listen to my venting?
Sure. I understand. I felt somewhat pressured by Emily's demeanor and nodded. Walking to the parking lot under the umbrella, Emily stopped in front of a white car and unlocked it.
Please, after you?
Thank you. I hesitantly got into her car. Sitting in the driver's seat, she asked, "Is it okay if I take you to your company?" To which I nodded. After starting the engine, she expertly set the destination on the car's GPS and began driving.
You know, the manager he spilled coffee on you earlier, Truman, to put it simply, he's a power-harassing, incompetent manager who got his job through connections.
Connections?
Yeah, connections. Apparently, he's the nephew of our company's CEO and he always flaunts that fact, bossing people around. He interferes everywhere, yells at his subordinates for no reason, and yet, he's utterly useless at his job.
Well, I can't believe there are still such blatant nepotism hires. Does the company's upper management recognize this and just let it slide?
I don't know. Our company's structure is outdated, and they don't take compliance seriously. There's no way for regular employees like us to report directly to the higher-ups without going through our bosses. It's like everyone in a managerial position is just watching Truman's face, making it difficult to go through other managers and leaving him unchecked.
Emily sighed deeply.
And there was a senior employee who tried to fight and report Truman's wrongdoings to the higher-ups. But Truman crushed him with power. He intentionally caused damages and blamed the senior, forcing him into a situation where he had no choice but to resign.
What? He deliberately made mistakes to harm the company because he didn't like someone.
It's unbelievable, right? But for him, harassing someone he dislikes is more important than what happens to the company.
It's unbelievable. And the fact that the company lets this go on is unbelievable too.
Just today, he tried to take credit for the contract with Murphy Motors, barging in without knowing anything about the deal. Even though the whole company was buzzing about this contract, Truman was clueless until today. Of course, I had submitted reports and discussed it in meetings multiple times, but he never looked at the reports or paid attention in meetings. It's like he has no interest in work at all.
And to think he spilled coffee on the major client. In a way, that's almost impressive.
The power of assumption is strong. He probably thought that the person in charge of such a big deal at the major company would be some elite in a nice suit.
And he never imagined that person would be me, in work clothes, even though the company name was on my chest.
That's just the kind of person Truman is. There have been many employees who, like the senior, either resigned because they couldn't stand him or were driven out for various reasons, all because of him. People who genuinely love crafting things and are serious and just end up leaving. And those who stay are either sucking up to Truman or are the type who prefer to avoid conflict. I've put up with his tyranny because I love this industry, but I've reached my limit.
I see. I had no idea there was such a problematic person at your company. I was entrusted with this project to learn how to judge people and companies, but I still have a lot to learn.
Well, normally, you wouldn't know about internal relationships from the position of a client. Maybe detectives or police officers are better suited to sensing that kind of thing than corporate employees.
After making a joke, Emily sighed again, so deeply it was hard to tell how many times she had done so before. She must have been troubled by this for a long time. There might not be much I can do for her, considering all she has endured. But there is one thing. Using this method feels like stooping to that man's level, so I'd rather avoid it if possible. But desperate times call for desperate measures. After some hesitation, I decided to bring it up. What if, just what if, there was a way to get back at Truman? What would you do? Emily looked surprised. Perhaps she is wondering why I would suddenly suggest such a thing. After thinking it over for a moment, she nodded.
If there's a way, I'd want to take action. People like him will ruin the company. We can't let someone who destroys the environment for good craftsmanship go unchecked, not to mention wasting the efforts of seniors and colleagues who have fought before. But, Nick, what kind of method are we talking about?
It's simple. Fight connections with connections. It's a bit childish, but they started it, so it's fair game, right? She looked puzzled, but I gave her an encouraging smile. After dropping me off at my company, I immediately headed to a certain place. Despite the surprised looks from my colleagues I passed by, seemingly taken aback by my attire and the unusual atmosphere, I didn't let it bother me and proceeded to knock on the door of a specific room. A few days later, I had Emily come to our company's conference room under the guise of a business meeting. As I knocked and opened the door to the conference room, I could feel Emily gasp in surprise behind me.
What? President Murphy?
The president of our company waited for her inside the room. Emily, being a car enthusiast, recognized the president. She was stunned, standing there as if frozen, at the unexpected presence.
Hey, you must be Emily. My son always seems to be in your care.
Is he your son?
After expressing her surprise, Emily seemed to ponder for a moment. She was likely trying to recall if she knew someone with the surname Murphy. The president watched his reaction with a bit of amusement, then turned to me.
It's the man standing next to you, Emily.
Really?
Emily looked at my face. I nodded silently.
Seriously?
Sure.
I had heard that your dad also worked for the same company, but I never imagined you were the CEO's son. Oh, but the last names are different. Ah, complicated family matters.
Emily seemed confused as he glanced back and forth between me and President Murphy before asking me hesitantly. No, It's not about hiding the fact that I'm the CEO's son. I use the name Addison at the company. Addison is my mom's maiden name, and my real name is Nick Murphy. Only the executives and some employees know I'm the CEO's son. Born into a privileged family, both of my parents, despite being busy, poured all their love into raising me. I loved my family business, cars, and I admired my dad who worked hard for the company, striving to follow in his footsteps. However, this perfect environment also bred unwarranted jealousy and resentment. Achievements in exams or competitions were often attributed to parental influence, not my own efforts. Whether it was sports or arts, it might be a compliment for them, but there was no way that I could be pleased when they said, "If your parents are good, the son will grow up well." Friends, perhaps jokingly, teased me for being a rich kid. In high school, my first girlfriend bragged behind my back that her boyfriend was the CEO's son. Being known everywhere as the CEO's son felt more like a shackle than an honor, which is why I wanted to hide my identity and test my own abilities while I was still young.
This guy is stubborn. He insisted on not using any connections, took our company's job hunting on his own merit, and joined the development team. Of course, I had asked the head of development to give him tasks outside of development as well to gain experience. Sending him to deal with Emily Company was part of that process. I wanted him to learn how to judge other companies and people, but I never expected my son to return home having had coffee spilled on him.
We are truly sorry for the misconduct of our employee.
That's all right. We don't want an apology from you. It needs to come from Truman himself to be meaningful.
Yes, that makes sense.
Emily agreed, with her expression complex. She is likely thinking that man would not easily apologize.
To make him reflect, we might have to intimidate him a bit.
Intimidate?
Yes, it would be good if he came to regret his actions and apologized alone. But from what I've heard, I doubt he's that type of man. So, we're thinking of going directly to the CEO. Truman's tyranny has caused many talented individuals to leave, right? Your company is honest and has technical prowess. It would be a significant loss for us to let it go, and we truly hope for reform. To that end, let's bring up the contract, though a little pushy, and say that we can trust a company that disrespects compliance like this.
My dad said, pausing before smiling gently. It was not the expression of a CEO, but the gentle, caring face of a dad shown at home.
And you know, Emily, your dad was one of my best colleagues. I've heard a lot about you from him. I personally cannot forgive a man who causes pain to the dear daughter of my valued employees, so I hope you'll allow me to meddle a little.
Mr. Murphy, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The meeting to discuss these issues was scheduled for a week later, outside of business hours, in Emily Company's reception room. The contrast between Truman, the manager's shocked expression upon seeing me, and the bewildered Truman, the CEO, was slightly amusing. Emily, brought along under the pretext of being a deal representative, looked nervous. "Hello, Mr. Truman. It's been a while since our last encounter."
Good afternoon, Mr. Truman. It seems my son was under your care recently.
We greeted Truman warmly. Truman looked back at us with a slightly puzzled expression.
Is he your son? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Really, it was just a few days ago. My son, dressed in work clothes, apparently had the misfortune of visiting your reception room. where you kindly decided to clean his dirty work clothes by spilling coffee on them.
At my dad's words, Truman seemed to finally realize it was me he had treated so rudely. His face turned from confusion to bright red, glaring at me sharply.
What? Are you son of the CEO? Are you?
Hey, what kind of attitude is that towards a client CEO and his son? More importantly, what Mr. Murphy is referring to, what's that about?
I have no idea. Perhaps he's mistaken.
No, it's true. I was there.
Emily said, speaking up firmly for the first time. Truman, the manager, shot her a glare as if to warn her not to say more, but Emily, prepared to resign if necessary, was unfazed.
While I was preparing the documents, Nick was waiting in the reception room, where Truman barged in and said, "Looks like your dirty work clothes got a bit cleaner. Be grateful." After hearing Truman's shouting, I rushed over and found Nick drenched in coffee and Truman yelling at him.
Is that true?
No, it was a misunderstanding.
As she said, you grabbed my arm, claiming this wasn't a place for subcontractors or bottom-tier workers like me. It seems your company has quite the prestigious employee training program. I interjected, forcing Truman into silence. The CEO's face drained of color.
What have you done? You should apologize to him.
I didn't realize he was a client.
That's no excuse.
The CEO demanded a deep apology from Truman. It seemed the CEO at least had a minimum level of decency. I was almost impressed by Truman's audacity to still challenge me in this situation. Seeing the opportunity, I spoke up. An apology for spilling coffee on me is sufficient. Fortunately, the stains were removed by cleaning, and we won't terminate a contract over this. However, Truman, you mentioned you didn't realize I was a client.
And what about it?
That implies it would have been acceptable if I were an employee or subcontractor of your company. Mr. CEO, haven't you noticed an unusual increase in resignations from Truman's department recently? One can easily imagine how someone who throws coffee on strangers behaves with their employees. Personally, I wouldn't want to work under such a supervisor.
I've only heard a bit of the story, so I'm not jumping to conclusions. But I believe a good company is made by its employees. A company can be improved or worsened by its staff. Employees who oppress good workers are honestly like a cancer. I strongly suggest conducting an investigation.
You're right. I'm embarrassed to admit I was unaware of these issues. We will conduct an internal investigation, and if these allegations prove true, we will take strict action.
What? Are you really going to believe what outsiders say?
The company isn't a playground. What joy do you find in acting like a bully? You are behaving yourself at home until the investigation is complete.
The CEO said with a sigh of exasperation. True to Truman's defense, the mere words of an outsider wouldn't constitute proof. Yet, ironically, the manager's behavior provided the strongest evidence. The investigation reached out not only to current employees, but also to those who had left the company. The results of the investigation were as expected. Half a year later, due to our busy schedules, we hadn't had the chance to meet up for a while, so today we had planned to have a meal together. Naturally, we chose that familiar diner. It seemed new menus had been added to the menu list since our last visit. As I was looking over the menu with interest, I heard someone call out, "Nick," and I looked up. "Emily, it's been a while. You look well.
Do I? Yeah, maybe. I've been really enjoying my work lately. It's all thanks to you and your dad.
I'm glad to hear that. I was worried you might be overexerting yourself. By the way, what happened to Truman? Since then, she and I have grown even closer, frequently exchanging personal messages through our private contacts. Our relationship continues to be like that of comrades who share a love for cars and dedication to our work. Now we're closer than ever. We don't just talk about work and cars, we talk about hobbies and family. I enjoyed listening to her weekend and holiday stories. And now we converse in a more casual manner. Despite knowing that I'm the son of a major corporation CEO, she treats me the same as before. Lately, I find this relationship with her to be very comfortable.
Actually, I haven't told you, but Truman was transferred to the factory. There was talk of firing him, but it was decided to keep him under surveillance instead, fearing he might cause trouble elsewhere.
Is it safe to keep him around?
Yeah, there's a foreman at the factory, kind of like a master craftsman, and he's been a friend of the CEO for a long time. He reports directly to the CEO if anything happens, so the former manager can't just pull ring anymore. Because he's loud and strict, I bet he's genuinely intimidating. Truman, he only ever bullied those weaker than him.
I see, so that's a way to discipline someone. Straightening out twisted attitudes seems most effective with that kind of approach.
Really? Those who were complicit in wrongdoing or engaged in power harassment along with the former manager were all disciplined at once, so that was probably a bigger ordeal. But things are definitely improving. Everyone has become motivated to create products that are second to none, just like before. Someday, Nick, I'll surprise you with a product so impressive. You better be ready for it.
The sight of her slightly mischievous yet proud smile was somewhat dazzling and felt incredibly beautiful to me. Life is unpredictable. Just like Emily, who once contemplated resigning, is now laughing with eyes shining brightly. Just as the man who had caused so much trouble and acted selfishly received his due consequences. Life can change for the better or worse at any moment. That's why it's essential to make decisions and take action. I too should muster my courage. With determination, I reached into my bag and pulled out a pair of movie tickets.
It seems we just don't mesh well. You don't have to come in from tomorrow.
I had reached my limit. I couldn't follow such a boss any longer. I responded on the spot. Understood. I will resign effective today. Thank you for the brief time I've been here. At that moment, it was decided that I would leave the job I loved. While I was getting used to the fast-paced days, a newly hired clerk came to tell me there was a visitor. Wonder what it is? I thought as I headed to the reception room, where I found Samantha waiting.
John, please, won't you come back to our company?
Upon seeing me, Samantha immediately prostrated herself on the floor. The once domineering Samantha who was harsh on employees was nowhere to be seen. My name is John Baker. I've been working at a boutique couture shop in a small town for 20 years. Though it's called a couture shop, there have been fewer customers looking for couture lately. So we also handle suits, shirts, and even school uniforms, which has allowed us to keep going till today. Far from being dissatisfied with this company, I am fond of it for its community ties and values. However, the dark clouds over the company began when the president, who had been managing it, fell ill. The boutique was established by the president in his younger years, but he had been unwell lately. Eventually, he could no longer appear at the shop front, and his successor was his granddaughter, Samantha Smith, who had no prior experience in this field. The transition was made, but regardless of her work performance, her way of dealing with people was just terrible. I was particularly targeted by the new president, Samantha.
John, how's sales lately? I'd like you to secure some new contracts soon.
She asked me, clearly in a bad mood. Yes, I've been making rounds, but it's hard to find individuals interested in ordering couture. It might sound like an excuse, but it's true that interest in couture has been waning over the years. The reality that our couture shop model is dwindling is also true. However, Samantha scolded me relentlessly.
I don't want to hear excuses. It's not that contracts can't be secured. You just haven't done enough until you get them. It's not enough to just visit our regulars. I need you to find new clients.
Saying this, Samantha let out an exaggerated sigh.
Don't think you can stay here forever. Increase your time outside. Don't come back until you've secured a contract.
Samantha stood up, grabbing her bag. It was a designer bag and a well-tailored suit. Because the president represents the company, Samantha, who spent her working hours at spas and saunas, began to lose the employees' respect. Are you taking a break, Ms. President? We'll have to be ready by 3 p.m. for a meeting about the uniforms we supply. Before I could finish, Samantha slammed her bag onto the desk with a loud noise.
Excuse me, a break. Understand this. A president doesn't have breaks. It's troublesome to be lumped together with your regular employees. You never know where a good opportunity might pop up, and it's essential to show your face around. Think before you speak, will you?
With that, Samantha turned swiftly and headed for the exit. Her large diamond necklace shone brightly, almost blindingly. Right as lunch break started, I hurried through my meal. Ever since the previous president fell, the luxury of a leisurely meal had disappeared. Since Samantha took over, there's been an increased focus on performance and contract numbers, with no tolerance for maintaining the status quo or regression. There have been days, she has said, if you have time to take a lunch break, you should be out selling. Gone are the days of casual small talk and ordering takeout together. Now, none of that happens. It was a precious time for employee communication, but thinking those days are gone makes me incredibly sad. However, there's no time to wallow in sentimentality. Today, besides visiting our valued clients, I need to secure a new contract. If I skip the greetings for businesses and individuals whose orders are already confirmed, I could make more sales visits. But having been in this job for many years, I deeply believe that personal relationships are what matter most. It's enjoyable to work on and choose important couture pieces with a trusted tailor who understands you, and customers feel reassured by established relationships. That's why they buy expensive couture and choose us for their parties and wedding couture. Though I can't take my time, I make sure to greet our suppliers and valued clients carefully. At one elderly customer's home, I asked how their grandchild's wedding went. This grandmother had chosen and purchased her granddaughter's wedding couture with me. Hearing wonderful stories about the wedding and how satisfied they were with the couture made me really happy. When she said, "Please take care of my other granddaughter's wedding," I was truly delighted. As this goes, there's hardly any time left for visiting potential new clients. So naturally, I haven't secured any new contracts. The clock had just struck 2. I had to head back soon to make it in time for a meeting, so I started back to the office with heavy steps.
Welcome back. How did it go? You didn't slack off, so you must have snagged at least one contract, right?
Samantha's words made me mumble in response. Samantha, who had returned early for once, was here, and her presence was almost enough to drive me insane. Seemingly displeased with my reaction, Samantha kicked the desk and raised her voice.
Don't tell me you've got no results. Really, you're just dead weight to the company. Maybe you should start job hunting. Though, there's nothing less needed than an unskilled person in their 40s.
Irritated by Samantha's words, I reported the little progress I had made. However, a client who previously purchased couture for a wedding was pleased and said they'd request our services again. Hearing my story, Samantha snorted.
And when will they buy? How many pieces? What's the unit price? Is this going to be a continuous deal?
Accusingly questioning me, Samantha continued her criticism in a cold voice.
Listen, you seem to think socializing is sales. Sales isn't over until the product is delivered and the invoice is sent. It doesn't profit us to take your casual conversations seriously and brag about them.
While I felt like arguing back against Samantha's point, it's true I hadn't secured any new contracts. Determined to land a contract tomorrow to prove her wrong, I started preparing for the upcoming meeting. But while I was stapling documents for everyone, Samantha suddenly said something unexpected.
Right, I have to leave for an appointment now, so let's postpone the meeting report till tomorrow.
As Samantha began to get ready, I couldn't help but ask, wait a minute. I was told we had a meeting today. If we don't confirm and proceed with the orders today, we won't make it in time. It's essential for the president to be there. Do you really have an unavoidable appointment? Samantha made an obviously annoyed face.
It's an important dinner. I don't have time to spend on you, so I'm leaving now.
With that, she briskly headed towards the exit. Samantha, reaching for the door, turned to me before leaving.
Don't think your work ends after the meeting. Once you've placed the orders, go out and bring back at least one contract. Of course, there's no overtime pay, so do your best.
Samantha laughed heartily and left with a spring in her step. The person who came for the meeting was puzzled, thinking the president would be present, but I managed to get their understanding. In a small-scale company like ours, trust is everything. The previous president always stressed this to the employees and practiced it himself. He would always show up for sales and meetings, and after delivery, he provided meticulous service. This built the trust from the community that has supported us thus far. But lately, I've felt that trust in our company is waning. By sincerely handling the situation and securing orders as usual, I was able to gain understanding. After sending off our business partners, I immediately started preparing for more sales visits. I'm heading out for a bit, so you all can leave when it's convenient. Thanks for today. It was already completely dark, and work hours had long since ended. I greeted a few employees and headed out for sales. The next day, I arrived at work more spirited than ever. Yesterday, during my cold calls, I happened to speak with someone interested in renewing their company's uniforms. It wasn't a large company, but conversations progressed smoothly, and we were able to agree on a contract right then. For now, it's just summer clothes and winter sweaters. And since we're not dealing with large corporations, the profit won't be substantial. However, if they liked our service, it could lead to renewing their winter attire and possibly referrals to other businesses. I know well how such connections can lead to further opportunities. I felt light both in heart and step, thinking I could make a good report to Samantha. But my hopes were quickly dashed. Samantha, who arrived at work a bit late, called me in right away.
John, don't we have a report from yesterday's meeting? And I'd like to hear about what happened afterward.
Yes, I'll report now. I walked over to Samantha with a spring in my step, but she was rubbing her temples, looking wary. Are you okay? Are you feeling unwell, Miss President? Just get on with it, was all she said. There was a smell of alcohol. Apparently, she had been drinking until early morning and wasn't feeling well. Coming to work smelling of alcohol and looking so lethargic. What kind of president is that? Despite my astonishment at Samantha, I succinctly shared the events of yesterday. We proceeded with the order as usual for this year. There was some negotiation on price, but they understood that it wouldn't change moving forward. And then...
Hold on, they asked for a discount. You pushed back, wanting to raise the prices, right?
Samantha glared at me with bloodshot eyes. No, of course, we'd like to raise prices given inflation. But since we're distributing the same products as other companies, that's difficult. Considering their profit margins, they wouldn't agree to that. Samantha became infuriated at my explanation.
That's why they are walking all over us. Without a strong stance like then we won't take it. What will you do? It's not about their profits. You need to prioritize our profits first.
Even though she's the president, I couldn't agree with Samantha's point of view. Sure, tough negotiations and pushing back are sometimes necessary. But business can't last if it's all about one party taking all the profit. Especially in dealings between companies, that's even more the case. Arguing would only add fuel to the fire. I continued my report from yesterday. We'll consider the pricing moving forward. Also, we secured a new contract. My report seemed to spark a slight interest in Samantha.
Not bad. How much profit will it bring?
We've taken an order for summer clothing and winter sweaters for a company of a few dozen employees. It's not a huge scale, but it's a start for future opportunities. However, Samantha looked disappointed at my explanation.
That's it. And it's not even couture. Really, you're useless.
After all the running around outside of work hours, this was her response. I had reached my breaking point. Excuse me, but you don't understand anything about this job. It's these connections that get us work. Your focus on immediate profit is wrong. For the first time, I stood up to my boss. Samantha seemed taken aback by my reaction, but quickly reverted to her usual haughty demeanor.
Understood. It seems we just don't mesh well. You don't have to come in from tomorrow.
I had reached my limit. I couldn't follow such a boss any longer. I responded on the spot. Understood. I will resign effective today. Thank you for the brief time I've been here. At that moment, it was decided that I would leave the job I loved. What's going to happen now? Alone in the empty room, I worried about my future. Though I had left in a hurry, I had nowhere to go. Even though I enjoyed my work, my salary was never high, so I didn't have much in savings. Even if I lived frugally to the extreme, it was clear my money would run out quickly. One day, a familiar name popped up on my smartphone. Tom Wilson. Tom and I went to the same college, and for the first few years after graduation, we kept in touch and went out for drinks, but it had been years since we'd interacted outside of exchanging greeting cards. The call from an old friend made me overjoyed. "Long time no see. How have you been?"
Really, it's been a while. I'm good. You sound well too, John.
I was excited, but Tom's next words dampened my spirits.
How's work? Knowing you, John, I'd guess you're a capable boss with many subordinates.
That's tough to say, but I've been unemployed for a while. Tom was always upbeat, but even he seemed at a loss for words.
It must have been tough. Let's not talk over the phone. How about we go out for drinks? It's sudden, but how about today?
I eagerly accepted Tom's invitation. Just the thought of seeing Tom made me happy, and I felt like I needed someone to talk to. We decided on a place and time, and agreed to meet at a pub we used to frequent.
I was shocked. You clashing with the president and storming out of the company. You used to hate conflicts, always apologizing even when the other party was at fault.
I was surprised too, but I just couldn't get along with the new president. Not understanding the field work is one thing, but not considering clients or partners at all. Tom listened to my complaints, nodding all the while. Even after years without seeing each other, I was grateful to have a friend with whom I could speak so openly.
Did you always work in sales at that company?
Sales was the main part, but I also worked on the company's website and tried developing new products. It was fun, but we never really got anywhere due to budget constraints. While showing Tom the company's website on my smartphone, I explained that I had made it myself. Tom was amazed.
Did you really make this? I thought it was done by an amateur, but it's as good as if we had outsourced it.
The previous president wanted a website that would attract young people, so I studied hard. Tutor is beautiful, but the industry is dwindling. I had to think differently, but there's only so much we can do with our size. Tom leaned in as I talked.
What were you thinking of? Tell me anything.
Overwhelmed by Tom's enthusiasm, I shared my farts and what I hadn't been able to execute. The demand for everyday couture is decreasing, but the need for dressing up on special days or for social media is definitely increasing. Plus, considering inbound demand, focusing on special days rather than everyday use is the way to go. I passionately explained my vision to Tom. Besides, I wanted to create other products, not just couture, delivering high-brand leather goods at a slightly lower price. Consumers would appreciate affordable quality products, and the profit margin would be high. We can't survive on thin margins alone. Tom listened intently, crossing his arms and pondering.
Was it because of the initial investment, or did you not proceed because you had no funds?
That, and the current president harshly criticized the idea. She said a couture shop shouldn't bother with extras. I understood the president's point of view. I too wanted to preserve the old couture shop that the predecessor cherished without changing it. But it's impossible to resist the tide of time in a declining industry. I had hoped to bring new ideas to the company, but they were not welcomed. Tom finished his beer in one gulp, then turned to me.
John, how about working for my company? I'll pay you a fixed salary equal to what you were making, plus commission on sales. Not a bad deal, right?
Tom's eyes were serious. I knew Tom had started his own brand and was managing it as a sole proprietor, but I hadn't expected he could afford to hire someone like me. When I tried to confirm what he had said, Tom laughed and said,
You underestimate me. True. My main business is online, and I don't have a physical store, but that's enough nowadays. It's about time I expanded. I can't keep up with just outsourcing.
Then Tom whispered to me the turnover of his store and how much he earned in a month so that others couldn't hear. Hearing the amount, my eyes widened in shock. He was making in a month what I earned in a year.
So I'm looking forward to it. I'll be counting on you from next week.
We agreed to formalize the contract later, but it was decided that I would be hired at Tom's company. At Tom's company, I immediately made an impact. Revamping the previously hard-to-navigate and inconvenient product search website, the page views skyrocketed by more than tenfold. Additionally, I introduced suits and leather accessories to Tom's company, which had mainly been selling t-shirts. The usability and quality were well received, and word of mouth led to sales that soon overshadowed the t-shirts.
Hey, the orders won't stop, and production can't keep up. Can you do something about it?
Offering good products at low prices, plus the brand reliability Tom has built up over time. I'm really happy to be able to do what I couldn't before due to budget constraints. Even as we spoke, purchase notifications kept popping up on the tablet. Production was nearly at its limit, and Tom seemed happy but scratching his head.
Your old company let go of a real talent.
It was just good timing and the right environment. Anyone could have done what I did. Suddenly, my smartphone rang. Looking at the display, Samantha's name appeared. Wondering what she wanted, I nervously answered the phone. Hello.
John, something terrible has happened. Can you come back? Actually, I need you to come back right now. Is that okay?
Samantha sounded more flustered than ever, so I decided to listen. What's wrong?
Our couture customers say they'll go elsewhere if you're not here. Other partners are also asking for you, and the company website is having continuous issues without updates. Can you come back soon and help?
Even though I was no longer with the company, I responded politely. I see. I don't think it's appropriate for me to deal directly with clients, so I'll pass. But I can fix the website and system issues on my next day off. I didn't hand that part over, so that's my bad. I thought I was being reasonable, but Samantha seemed unsatisfied.
What are you talking about? Just come back. After all the company has done for you, what are you doing wandering around?
I was terminated from your company. Are you offering to rehire me? I could hear a sigh of frustration from the other end.
Don't act so smug. You must be struggling to make ends meet, right? I can pay you the same salary as before, so don't worry about that.
Tom burst out laughing, hearing Samantha's words. He gestured as if to say, "Tell her off." Do you know my salary now? I probably make in a month what you earn in a year. My salary would likely surpass the annual revenue of my former company in just a few months. Though I had fond memories of my old workplace, I was fulfilled in my current job and certainly didn't want to return to work under such a boss. After bidding Samantha goodbye, I hung up. Tom's company grew busier with just me joining, leading to partnerships with outsourced companies and recruiting new talents, rapidly expanding its scale. Seeing products I developed being appreciated and posted on the social media, I felt truly glad to have joined this company. As I navigated through my bustling days, a newly hired clerk came to inform me of a visitor. Curious, I headed to the reception room, where I found Samantha.
John, I'm begging you, please come back to our company.
Upon seeing me, Samantha pleaded so desperately it was almost pitiable. The once domineering Samantha, who used to lash out at employees, was nowhere to be seen. What happened? Let's hear it first. I managed to get Samantha to sit on the sofa. She looked so worn out, it was hard to remember her once lively face.
Since then, we've been losing customers non-stop, not just individual clients, but corporate partnerships as well. I can't even pay the employees' salaries. If things continue like this, we'll have to close the shop. I need your help.
While I felt sorry for Samantha, she had brought this upon herself. Neglecting communication with people and solely pursuing the company's profits, it was inevitable that partners would turn their backs. I'd like to help, but I'm swamped with work at my current company. I'm sorry, but I can't assist you. Samantha, in a last-ditch effort, begged me for help, almost as if clutching at straws. Samantha, pull yourself together. Have you done everything you can? Now is the time to hit the ground running. To regain trust, you need to meet face to face, understand their needs, and empathize with their concerns. Please take the time to do what you've neglected until now meticulously. Doing just that will surely make a difference. We can talk after that. Samantha wiped her tears and nodded firmly.
I was wrong. I'll start doing it from now on.
With that, Samantha stood up. It was good if she realized even a little about what's important in business. However, keeping a company going isn't that easy. Though I said that honestly, starting from scratch now seemed nearly impossible. I remembered the face of the predecessor I owed so much to. I wanted to do something to prevent the company I loved from going bankrupt. But I'm swamped with the business I'm currently handling and can't think of anything I could do. I bit my lip, feeling the weight of my powerlessness. Several years have passed since I joined Tom's company. As our company grew, so did the number of companies we dealt with.
John, what do you think of this? I believe it would be perfect for an important dinner date.
I was impressed by Samantha's proposal. Yay, it's exactly as I envisioned. The fabric is lovely too. The response was good when we announced it on the social media. So let's place an order for $50,000 worth with your company for now.
Thank you so much.
Since then, the performance of Tom's company has skyrocketed, and we've had to establish new departments and hire more staff. I contributed to producing hit products, especially in the suit department. We developed new suits incorporating couture designs and fabrics as accents, which were well received not just by American but also by foreigners, rapidly expanding our market. The challenge was securing a steady supply of quality fabric and connecting with companies strong in couture, which led me to contact Samantha. Samantha not only sourced the fabric but also provided consumer-oriented suggestions, resulting in a better product than initially planned. I really appreciate having you, Samantha. Thank you. Samantha blushed at my thanks.
I learned what's important from you, John. I was such a pathetic person. Despite being a president, I was desperate to show my authority in an industry I knew nothing about, but that was a terrible mistake.
Now I hear she's built good relationships with her employees and partners, earning the community's trust. I'm convinced Samantha's company will continue to thrive. Tom, who had been all about work, found a significant partner. Today is his wedding day. I was as happy for Tom's marriage as if it were my own. Congratulations. You've never looked better.
Well, it's all thanks to the design of this suit. I hope I'm not outdone by it.
Laughing at that, we shared a moment of joy, brightening the mundane days and making a one-day-only special occasion even more memorable. Clothes have the power. I'm happy to work with such power. I want to continue creating work that adds a touch of beauty to someone's daily life.
Make sure to check the documents and then summarize them in a report.
What is this?
After working for decades, can you even do a simple document check?
Really? Just because he's the manager, why does he feel the need to talk down to everyone? There's something to be said for professionalism. No, even basic human decency. To think he made it to become a manager without being able to use formal language.
If you've got it, make sure it's done by today.
No, as I said before, I have other things I need to do.
That doesn't matter. If you can follow my orders, I'll have to fire you.
Fired? Does he really think I'll just do as he says? It's not like I'm rebelling just because he's younger. If it were truly necessary work, I'd take it on without complaint. But the documents he handed me were from the back shelf. And they're from 5 years ago. Why summarize documents for a company we've already ceased dealing with? It was a waste of time, and I had no intention of playing along with this farce.
Hey, did you get those documents summarized? You promised to submit them yesterday. Why haven't I seen them yet? Do you need to be told to do everything?
I haven't done anything with the documents. As I said yesterday, I have no intention of wasting my time.
So you're saying you can follow the orders of your manager?
If you're going to wield your power as the manager like that, then please do the job of a manager properly. Is assigning meaningless tasks something you think a manager should be doing? I made my stance clear. Then,
Oh, if you're going to speak to me like that, I'll show you what a manager's job is. We don't need old-timers like you. You're fired.
My name is John. I'm currently 63 years old. I'm still working, but now work is all I have left. I had a wife who was of the same age, but lost her in a car accident 20 years ago. Since we had no children, I've been alone ever since. But working kept me motivated and needed by the company and its president. 45 years ago, just after graduating high school, I was living by doing part-time jobs. Welcome, just you today.
Actually, I'm expecting 3 team members. Could we get a table?
Certainly. I was working part-time at a steakhouse. The pay wasn't great, but the owner was a really nice guy, so I enjoyed my life. This shop was quite established, with 80% regular customers. Thanks to those regulars, the business was sustainable. But one day, the owner called me over.
I'm sorry to spring this on you suddenly, but I'm thinking of closing the shop at the end of this year.
What?
The customers have been dwindling year by year, and I'm reaching my physical limits. I'm sorry, but you'll need to look for a new job.
I was honestly taken aback by this sudden news from the owner. Sure, I knew the shop would close eventually since he hadn't taken any apprentices. But I hadn't expected it to come this soon. I had never thought about the future, couldn't even imagine doing anything other than working there. I knew the day would come, but the owner gave me a 6-month notice. From that day, I started looking for a job, but it wasn't going well.
Today I'm alone, so I'll take the counter seat, please.
Understood. That day, a regular customer, a company president, came in and I seated him at the counter. As usual, I served water and a towel, then let him enjoy his steak. It was the same service as always.
Can't find a job.
What?
I heard from the owner about closing the shop. You'll be out of a job, right?
Yay, that's right. With just a high school diploma and no real skills, it's been tough finding someone willing to hire me.
How about joining us then, as a part-timer? If you show good results, I'll make it a full-time position.
I doubted my ears for a moment. Was this person serious? He's talking about hiring me with no skills and just a high school education? That seemed like a risk. But are you sure about me?
The owner has been taking care of me for a long time. He consulted me about you. I can just stand by and do nothing, right?
The owner had gone to the back to get some ingredients and wasn't there, but to think he was this concerned about me? The owner did.
I believe in the importance of connections between people. I became good friends with you here, which must be fate. I want to extend a helping hand to a young person who is willing to try hard. When I started my company, the owner helped me out with a lot of advice, and I knew it would come back around someday.
The president's words resonated with me. Connections between people. The owner was good to the president, so the president was good to me. Is that how the chain reaction works? I naturally accepted it and decided not to waste the opportunity the president had given me. After that, I started working at the president's company as soon as the owner's shop closed. Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with you.
It'll be different from working at the steakhouse, but do your best, okay?
I'll do my best to meet your expectations. The president trusted me, and I worked hard to live up to that trust. Of course, I had never done sales before, so at first, I really struggled to get results. But thanks to the training provided by my colleague and the support from my owner, I quickly grew as a salesperson and was able to produce decent results a year after starting. After that, I created new sales opportunities and used those connections to secure more and more contracts. President, it's just a 3-month contract for now, but I managed to secure a deal with Smith Industries.
Really?
They said they'd consider future dealings based on our performance over these 3 months, so let's keep up the good work. I studied hard while working on how to secure contracts and gain trust, and with each experience, I came to understand various things. Thanks to that, I was able to secure some significant contracts for the company, and I truly enjoyed my work. Then, one day when I was 30, the president called me in.
Sorry for calling you in suddenly. I wanted to talk to you about a promotion.
A promotion?
You've performed beyond my expectations, and I see you as a necessary asset for our company's future. So, I was thinking, how about taking on a managerial position? Having someone with your track record in charge could help the company grow.
A managerial position. I was genuinely pleased with the offer of a promotion and would have accepted it immediately under normal circumstances. However, I still wanted to work on the front lines. I considered my job in sales to be my true calling. I pride myself on my communication skills and my ability to win trust and secure contracts more than anyone else. That's why I wanted to work where I could fully utilize those skills. Thank you. Being offered a promotion is truly an honor, but I want to continue working in sales for this company. Also, after observing my colleagues and owners, I don't think I'm cut out for managing people.
I see. If that's how you feel, how about a raise instead? Anyway, I'm happy as long as you're willing to work for the company. Let's keep up the good work.
Of course. I owed a lot to the president for helping me, and I had always intended to work my hardest for the company. Of course, the fact that he offered me a promotion meant he recognized my efforts. That shows I've made an impact, and I was happy just to have that conversation. And I plan to continue producing results and contributing to the president and the company. After all, I was picked up by the president. I was determined to repay that favor over a lifetime. That was my feeling. And so, I continued to deliver results, and before I knew it, 10, 20, 30 years had passed. In that time, I got married, and 20 years ago, I lost my wife in an accident. Throughout the tough times in my life, I was always helped by those around me, and somehow I managed to keep going without losing sight of my life. Even at this age, some might find me odd, not having been promoted and still working as a regular sales employee, but I enjoyed my work and wanted to repay the favor in my own way. Then one day,
I've been appointed as the new manager starting today, so I'm counting on everyone. The overall sales performance has been declining, so I'm here to make some reforms.
The previous manager had retired, and a new one in his 30s had been brought in. He had worked at a company known to the president, and his capabilities were well regarded. But from day one, he declared significant reforms.
First off, there are too many employees in the sales department. We'll be trimming the unnecessary force. Of course, those who haven't been performing are included, but the primary target will be the older employees with no future here, so just be prepared.
Our workforce was relatively young, but it's true there were salespeople in their 40s and 50s. Maybe he was referring to me, now in my 60s. I had that thought, but there was no use worrying about every little thing. Besides, I had a major task ahead of me. For that reason, I didn't have the time to seriously listen to this young manager's talk. That's what I thought, but...
Hey, what are you doing?
What? I'm preparing for the next negotiation.
Do you not realize that's pointless? Didn't you listen to what I said earlier? Or is your hearing so bad you didn't hear it?
If I stay silent, he just goes on. But getting angry at someone more than 2 decades younger isn't worth it. What I need to focus on isn't getting upset, but producing results through my work. I plan to deliver results on the project I'm working on until retirement. That's what I had decided. I have things to do. Is that all right with you?
That's what I'm saying. You don't have any work to do. What job can an old person do? Seriously? Can't you even understand that?
Huh? Sure, I'm nearing retirement, but what does he know about me? That's the problem with young people these days. Yet, it's something I don't want to say. That's exactly what an old person would say. Still, I don't want to be criticized by people not understanding what work I do or the achievements I've contributed to this company for things they know nothing about. Don't worry, I won't be a burden. I'll just do my job.
This is why I hate stubborn old people. Staying as a regular employee without being promoted until this age speaks for itself, doesn't it?
What?
You're still a regular employee because you can't do the job, right?
Ah, so that's the misunderstanding. To someone who knows nothing, I might indeed seem like a regular employee who couldn't get promoted, a useless one at that. It wouldn't be surprising if he thought that way. The company can't fire me even if they wanted to because of lifetime employment. That's probably what he thinks. However, there's probably no one in the company who thinks that way except for this manager. If he understood what kind of work I do, maybe his attitude towards me would change. That's what I thought. However,
well, if you really want to work that badly, I'll give you something to do. Here, check these documents and summarize them in a report.
What is this?
After decades of work, you can even do a document check.
It's not that. Why do I have to do document checking? I thought this kind of work was done by the administrative staff.
Are you trying to go against me, the manager? You've got some nerve. Or do you think you're better just because you're older?
Really? Just because he's the manager, why does he feel entitled to talk down to me like that? Indeed, hierarchical relationships are necessary. But before that comes professional manners. No, even basic human decency. Can he understand something so simple? It's surprising he made it to become a manager without being able to use even formal language.
If you've got it, finish it by today.
No, like I said before, I have things I need to do.
That doesn't matter. If you can follow my orders, I'll have to fire you.
Fired? Fired? Did he really think I would just comply? Of course, I'm not resisting because he's younger. If it were truly necessary work, I would take it on without complaint. But the documents he handed me were from the back shelf. And they're from 5 years ago. Why summarize documents for a company we've already ceased dealing with? It was a waste of time, and I had no intention of playing along with this farce.
Just get to work already.
He left after saying that, but I had more important work to do. I needed to prepare for negotiations and didn't want to waste time on such trivial matters. Fortunately, my desk is out of the manager's sight, and I spent the day working on my own tasks. The next day,
hey, did you get those documents summarized? You promised to submit them yesterday. Why haven't I seen them yet? Do you need to be told to do everything?
I haven't done anything with the documents. As I said yesterday, I have no intention of wasting my time.
So you're saying you can follow the orders of your manager?
If you're going to wield your power as the manager like that, then please do the job of a manager properly. Is assigning meaningless tasks something you think a manager should be doing? Knowing his personality, I was aware that saying this would only make him angry. But staying silent would only escalate things further, and I have no intention of wasting my precious time until retirement on such trivialities. However, my words seemed to have ignited his fury completely. He lost all composure, his face turned red, and he shouted at me.
Oh, if you're going to say that, then I'll show you what a manager's job is. We don't need old-timers like you. You're fired.
Are you making decisions based on your emotions? Isn't that the last thing someone in a managerial position should do?
You disobeyed your superior, so it's only natural, right? As a manager, I have the right to fire you. Pack your things and leave today.
I hadn't expected him to go this far in his anger. But he seemed serious. What a problem. I've never dealt with someone like this before. But I understood his personality then. Continuing to argue logically with him was pointless. If you insist, I'll leave immediately. What about the handover?
Your work is trivial and unnecessary. No one needs it, so there's nothing to hand over. What are you even talking about?
That's my line. What was he talking about? I wish he would stop being so selfish. Was that also an order from the manager? Since he said there was no need for a handover, then I won't do anything. So, you're saying there's no need for a handover?
Of course. It's better for us if an old-timer like you disappears quickly.
Understood? Since that's what he wanted, I left as he wished. But whatever happens next is not my concern. I was fired by the manager. It's up to him to fill the gap I leave. Understood. In that case, I'll leave the succession and everything else in your hands. With that, I'll take my leave.
Leave. Someone like you is better off quietly enjoying retirement at home.
I couldn't help but be amazed at the manager looking down on me until the very end, but that's just his character. People like him don't change because you say something. It's a waste of time and effort to even try. So I'll just do as he says. As he put it, I'm just a regular employee. And I got fired for defying the manager. That's all there is to it. However, I wonder if the other employees realize how bad it is for me to be leaving in this manner. Before I could leave the company, I was stopped.
Are you really going to leave?
I got fired, so I have to. But it seems the new manager will take care of everything, so don't worry.
But
if you ever have any trouble with work, feel free to reach out to me. You can always contact me. I said this and left, but my colleague looked quite anxious. It's understandable. But my place is no longer at the company, so it can't be helped. I thought of it as an early retirement as I reached home. I need to say goodbye to the president too, but I decided to wait and see. I just couldn't believe that this was the end of it. A week later.
Hey, who's handling this $1 billion deal?
That would be John. Have you forgotten? You fired him last week because he was old.
What? He was in charge of such an important deal. No wonder the performance wasn't improving. It's all because the old folks were covering for each other.
Even after I was gone, it seemed the manager had been bad-mouthing me, but I couldn't care less. What he thinks of me doesn't matter anymore. Let him say what he wants. However, I had been waiting quietly for a week. I knew exactly what would happen because I was in charge of that deal.
So, what are you going to do?
Don't worry, I'll handle it myself.
Apparently, the manager went to meet with my former client. There was a scheduled negotiation that day. Of course, since he said he would take over everything, I left all the documents with him. But whether he could handle the negotiation was questionable.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, isn't John coming today?
Yes, I am Bob Tyler, the new manager. He retired last week, so I'll be taking over.
The moment he said that, the faces of our clients tensed. They must have been wondering why I didn't show up. They must have been quite surprised. Naturally, you'd properly say goodbye to your clients before leaving. I had built a strong relationship with them, so they were likely shocked by the lack of communication from me.
Hello.
Thank you for calling.
I'm sorry to call suddenly. I heard you retired. Is that true?
The client stepped out and then contacted me. They must have never imagined I would leave my job without any notice. Rather than saying I retired, it's more accurate to say I was fired.
Fired?
The new manager who's there with you, he decided to start firing older employees. I explained everything the manager had said to me. The client was quite surprised but listened to my story to the end and understood. In this day and age, it's unheard of for someone to be fired in such a manner, so they must have been bewildered. But the fact that they believed me without any doubt shows how much trust I had earned from them.
So that's the situation. Understood. We'll start the negotiation now, and I'll get back to you later.
I'm truly sorry for ending things this way. It was irresponsible of me, and I apologize.
No need to apologize. It's not your fault. But rest assured, we'll make sure he takes full responsibility.
The client said this and then hung up. I could somewhat predict what would befall that manager after this, but it seemed things turned out far worse than I had imagined.
Could you please leave now?
Excuse me. I thought we were here to discuss the renewal of our contract. Is there a problem with the documents?
That's why I'm asking you to leave. We had you come today to discuss the renewal, but we have no intention of renewing our contract. Dismissing people unjustly and creating a workplace as you please is a clear abuse of power. We cannot do business with a company that allows such people.
The moment the client said this, the manager was at a loss for words. He might not have understood exactly what was happening, but he must have understood the client knew he was abusing his power. The manager must have been struggled then to be confronted with such accusations by a client he thought knew nothing. How did you know about this? And if we don't renew the contract, it will be my responsibility. I imagine the manager was swamped with various anxieties, but this was just the beginning.
Given my long-standing relationship with your company's president, I'll ensure your case is thoroughly reviewed. The position of a division head in a large corporation is significant. After all, if the top fails, everything below crumbles.
Please wait. What exactly are you talking about? I don't understand. And if we don't renew the contract, I'll be in trouble. Please.
We would have considered renewing the contract if someone like you hadn't shown up. But we can't trust you. Business is built on trust. We had trust in the person who was handling our account before, not you. Perhaps if another salesperson had come, we might have considered it, but we can't trust someone who makes unjust dismissals.
Hearing the words unjust dismissal repeatedly, the manager must have finally understood his situation. It was revealed that he had unjustly dismissed me. And from the client's words, it was clear how much trust I had garnered and how much I had contributed to the company. And then, he probably understood just how much of a positive impact I could have had on the company if I were still there.
Please wait. I never thought you and he had such a relationship. The company's performance was declining. I thought the only option was to downsize the workforce with no future.
You tried to reduce expenses for the company's sake, so it wasn't for personal gain or out of emotion, but purely for the company's benefit.
Of course, I wouldn't do something like that for personal reasons. That would be an abuse of power. I believe I understand my role as a manager.
The manager might have seen this as a way out of the dire situation. From the brink of hell, a fragile thread dangled down. That's the situation, I believe. He was determined to cling to that thread and escape hell at all costs. With that mindset, the manager frantically continued making excuses, unaware that those very excuses were tightening the noose around his own neck.
So, let me ask you one question. Who do you think is the least necessary person for the company in the current situation?
The least necessary person? That would be those who haven't produced results, I guess.
Not producing results doesn't mean there's no potential. New employees can't produce results immediately, and nurturing them is the job of the company and management.
A wrong answer could sever the thread to escape from hell. The manager scrambled to find the answer the client wanted. But there is no way the manager can answer such a question.
Cutting the upper management's salaries. Would that be the best answer?
A business is about money, and those who work primarily for money won't put in their best effort without compensation, especially not the upper management whose responsibilities and workload only increase.
Then,
it's not about those who don't produce results, but about eliminating negative elements like you. Removing the negatives naturally improves the company. Don't you think so? That's what you said and thought you did, right? Removing the least necessary people is truly the best approach.
Confronted by the client's words, the manager was shocked. He hadn't expected to be criticized like this. Promoted to become a manager at a young age, he must have felt quite pleased with himself. But merely stepping on others doesn't make one a competent manager. I continued working in sales until this age precisely because I was trusted with the company's most significant deals. Though I say it was entrusted to me, I was the one who got the deal sealed. Someone who fires someone else just for being old, without understanding the value of experience, isn't fit to be a manager. Being unfit for the role means getting paid as a manager is a waste. New employees or those with lesser skills aren't expected to carry such heavy responsibilities. However, if one earns a high salary and bears the title of manager, they must be stripped of their position if they fail to fulfill their duties.
You get what I'm saying, right? Since you tried to do the same thing, now that you're on the receiving end, you can say you don't understand, right?
No, that's not.
Got any excuses? I'm wrong.
It's not that, but.
Then you know what to do, right? What should be done for the company's sake.
The manager likely didn't expect such confrontation. He turned pale and fell silent. But it was the manager himself who clearly stated that unnecessary people for the company should be fired. Then, it's imperative to see that executed. If the manager was then considered the most unnecessary within the company, and if his own statements hold true, then he should be the one to resign.
But I have a family.
Weren't you acting for the company's sake? Are you going to bring personal issues into this?
That's.
Or are you going to admit that firing John was for personal reasons and not for the company's benefit?
I thought old people were useless. I'm really sorry.
The manager finally admitted his wrongdoing. My dismissal was unjust. While anyone could see this, the admission that mattered most needed to come from him.
All right, I'll report this to the president. Take care.
No, please.
That's all from me.
The client then dismissed the manager. According to the president, the client called later to relay everything. Consequently, the president decided to demote the manager. Upon hearing this, the manager was outraged, but the president detailed my hiring and efforts. The president believed in the manager and hired him, feeling pity for him after losing his job due to his acquaintance's company going bankrupt. The president had given the manager a chance out of sympathy, seeing a bit of me in him. However, focused only on results, the manager faced demotion due to his anger. It was his own doing. It couldn't be helped. I appreciated the president's opportunity and worked hard to repay that kindness. The manager took his position for granted. By then, the outcome was already decided. Later, the president contacted me, and I was able to return to the company. Busy since my return, I've committed to fulfilling my duties. The connections between people can sometimes greatly influence one's life. That's why it's crucial to value those connections, or life may take a turn for the worse. To prevent that, I want to live my life, never forgetting the kindness shown to me.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. "Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.